On your 40th or so viewing of Star Wars, A New Hope, did you start to notice that it's very hard to get an exact sense of the exact layout of the cantina? After all, the only landmark that the viewer really has is the bar itself, and we are left trying to relate all the action to this central fixture. Where exactly is the bandstand or the stage? How many alcoves are off of the main bar room? And how were there possibly enough of these side rooms to accommodate all of the tables of creatures that we are shown? Well, just like in the famous Tootsie Pops commercial,
the world may never know.
Actually, I was just being dramatic, but let's work with what we do know. First, let's start with the very earliest sketch, which production designer John Barry made in 1975 at George Lucas's suggestions. Lucas knew that he wanted a, quote, round bar, and we've already discussed the idea for a skylight. The only other request that he had was for alcoves coming off of the main room. In the drawing, you can see the offset entrance, with steps descending into the main area. You can also see that the original bar was a complete rounded rectangle in the center of the room, which was to change later. So let's count 9 alcoves, right? Well, not exactly. Next, we move to a photo of a scale model, a mock-up of the set that was done in preparation for construction. This picture is invaluable because it is probably the best source that we will ever have to see exactly what the floor plan of the finished set was like in 3 dimensions. Notice that I said the finished set because the extra scenes that would be added in would muddy the waters quite a bit. At the bottom left corner of the model's base, it says 6 floater coves for cover on opposite side. You can see that the design of the bar has now been changed to a U shape, which now ends at the back wall of the bar room. The back rooms to the immediate left and right of the bar really are not alcoves at all. This is very difficult to see in the film, but we can work with what we have to examine them closer. Here's a photo you'll be seeing again under the section on the praying mantis alien. This photo shows us that at least on the right side of the bar, the small room does not contain a table and chairs, merely storage boxes. This of course does make sense as to why only a back wall would have to be built, because it's all that the camera would see. And with the size of the crowd that Lucas wanted spilling over into the side rooms, the doorways would be blocked by characters that were milling about anyhow. Now let's look at the left side of the bar. This is nearly impossible to see in the movie, but here is what is probably the clearest photo that exists. This is a valuable photo for several reasons, but for our purposes here, it gives us the best view of the left-hand back room that we are going to get. We can't really see if anyone is entering or leaving the room in the cantina scene as we have it in the film, so what exactly is back there? Unfortunately, the January filming in California complicated this issue just a little bit, in rather an anachronistic way, which the magic of movies often allows for. As we mentioned, because of issues with the Greedo mask, the character's close-ups for his interaction with Han Solo needed to be refilmed. In fact, as we talked about in Chapter 2, it was Rick Baker's team that was tasked with upgrading the mask, adding air-powered movable antennae as well as a moving mouth feature. This mechanism later failed, which required an attempt at rigging the mask with a clothespin that was held in the actor's mouth. Here, though, we will only look at the staging of the extra Greedo scenes. It was decided to have some background characters over Greedo's shoulder because, after all, the goal of these extra scenes was to make the cantina appear even busier than it already was. During the conversation, what movie audiences saw was Harrison Ford filmed in London and Greedo filmed a second time in America, which, as you can see, presents a bit of a problem for those of us who are trying to determine the actual layout of the bar room. Han Solo's alcove, where he talks to Luke and Ben, and later, Greedo, is the middle of the 3 alcoves along the left-hand side of the room. This is pretty easy to figure out. You can see this in the film when he makes his exit after frying poor Greedo. The lost cut original rough edit of the cantina scene, which was first released on a CD-ROM in 1998 and later in the Blu-ray set of 2011, shows 2 aliens over Greedo's shoulder, who would be located about here. Yet, somehow, because of the reshoots, there is now a back room visible over Greedo's shoulder, containing a table, 2 different customers, and a window to the outside. So, even if we are meant to think that there is seating back there, it's still not an identical alcove to the other 6. But then again, even 8 alcoves makes it difficult to place everyone since so many groups of aliens are shown sitting together in the film. Even if you concede that not every table in the cantina is in a private room of its own, we still have to leave one alcove for the band. One very early Star Wars publication that was produced was a set of Star Wars blueprints that were printed by Ballantine in 1977. This was a packet that included copies of real film-used blueprints of different vehicles and sets. This blueprint, drafted by Alan Roderick Jones, gives some specifics to the central feature of the room, the bar and the drink dispenser itself. Even by magnifying the picture substantially, it is still difficult to read the written words, which are mostly technical terminology and specifics for set design. However, a few interesting factoids can still be gleaned. For example, the top right of the plans shows a design for the bar that was not used, which includes a gutter along the edge with a grill, quote, to catch spill from glasses. There is a large NG written over the top of this section, which I assume to be no-go. Between the detail of the drink dispensing station and the silhouettes of customers for scale, there appears to be an example of what the trim that surrounds the skylight above the bar would be like. Pointing to the top are the words 1 foot 6 inches VF from Sandcrawler, which obviously refers to the materials. Also written above this section is the following: open section above bar to be cooled with gauze, referring to the way the light source would be diffused to give the desired effect inside the bar. The majority of the rest of this page refers to the drink dispensing station, explaining which vessels are glass, which are metal, and pointing out the height of the pipes must vary. One note reads, steam to come from sides, leading the reader to believe that perhaps the goal was a little bit more of a mad scientist setup. The aerial view of this section, above the blueprint's title, has a large central cylinder with notation that reads, liquid nitrogen container. There are also 4 built-in computer keyboards that would be accessible to the bartender. Near the bottom right-hand corner of the blueprint, there is a list of different colors and metallic finishes for the drink containers, and the words, props all containers to be practical. The title on this sheet is Detail Number 2, and it would be many years before fans would have a chance to see other pages that were involved with the construction of this set. That chance finally came with the publication of an expensive coffee table book called Star Wars The Blueprints in 2013. Besides an easier-to-read image of this number 2 blueprint, which is dated January 24, 1976, 4 other Cantina-related blueprints are included. 2 of these show designs for decorative panels which were apparently unused. One shows the surface of a, quote, Cantina pool table, which is thought to be the gaming table in the background of the deleted Anchorhead scene. The last new blueprint is a fleshed-out evolution of the mock-up model we saw earlier, labeled Interior Cantina Plan and Elevations. It shows 6 distinct arched alcoves, with the 2 back rooms being smaller and having no windows. It also indicates that the walls would be plastered but cracked to give the rundown look that Lucas was hoping to achieve. Set designer John Barry said, George wanted those cubicles. There was the main part where the action was, but there was also a secret part where you could have a secret discussion. You had to have this maze quality where you could feel lost, so you wouldn't know what was around the corner. Only a couple of photos have surfaced to show the construction of the actual set that was built for filming in April of 1976. Paul Blake, who played Greedo, said, it was the nicest set because it was a real one and not in Tunisia. Before we go further, let's work our way around the completed structure of the cantina itself. Here's the entryway foyer, complete with droid detector. One thing I never knew as a kid is that there's actually seating in the entryway, and what looks like a spittoon. Hasbro at least assumed it belonged there because it made it to the backdrop of one of their 3-packs in the 90s. Here's the center view from the front of the bar. Here's the left side of the bar room. And here is the right side. There are several decorative items in the cantina that we cannot get a close look at in the film, such as the large shield-shaped object hanging on the wall on the left side of the room. A few years back, the official website pointed out some other strange fixtures. One is shaped like a crocodile. The other is a very strange gargoyle that, like the rest of the ceiling, is never seen in the final film. It looks much like the sort of thing you would later see in Jabba the Hutt's palace or on his sail barge. So, as we will see in the chapter about Cantina playsets over the years, you have to make concessions if you're going to map out the Cantina or find the correct place to put your action figures, because in reality not everyone was actually there at the same time. This is why no two Cantina representations ever seem to be exactly alike. To that point, here are a few noteworthy examples over the years at establishing a Cantina floor plan. This schematic was first published in Starlog Magazine's Technical Journal in 1993, and again in the Star Wars Technical Journal in 1995. It isn't completely accurate, of course, but a good try nonetheless. This design was improved upon by Jason Weatherly on his excellent website to try to make it more movie accurate, as well as document each alien's position in the Cantina. DK Books, known for their high-quality Star Wars releases, had to get very creative when they mapped out the Mos Eisley Cantina for their book of cutaway diagrams. A foreign site called Yodapedia.net also attempted to map the Cantina with this poster, which featured an elaborate map and chart. The Star Wars Miniatures role-playing game included the Cantina on this Tatooine map with a very different layout. Okay, next time in Chapter 4, we're going to turn our attention to the actual filmings of the scene itself, done both in London and in America. We'll catch you later.